Because they socialize us to put more value in being holy rather than being critical thinkers, we are therefore easy victims of those who have studied how the mind works and how to hijack the group minds of targeted populations. This is why those of us who know must teach African proverb. There is a mental state called thinking without actually thinking that allows controllers of information to embed false information into the collective minds of targeted populations through repetition. Repetition makes lies appear more truthful. Through repetition, even otherwise very intelligent people can be made to believe idiotic things. Case, point, and proof. Many of our people have been misled to believe that the reason why so many of our people now reveres our oppressors in spite of such a brutally horrific history of the contrary is because of the Willie Lynch myth. That silly myth presents what would in fact be the least effective and least plausible explanation for controlling millions of people down generational lines. It's absolutely untrue. It's not how true brainwashing works. Using a rock to clean one's butt is more effective than using the Willie Lynch method for controlling generations of millions of people. But through repetition of that narrative being fed into our communities, it's now believed by millions. But it's totally untrue. The true reason why many of our people now reveres our oppressors in spite of the horrific history of the contrary has nothing to do with a silly slave syndrome myth. It's because most of our people are not perceiving the oppressors based upon their true history. Most are instead perceiving them based upon their movies, constantly depicting their group as being heroes, defending the weak, and righting all wrongs. Through their monopoly over the media images and narratives that are constantly being fed into our collective minds, they've given their group a favorable and accurate image makeover within our collective minds. You see, in a normal conversation, when you're using logic, your guard is up. But when you're watching a movie, there's no debate. Your guard is down. The sensor part of your brain isn't agreeing or disagreeing like you would in a conversation. You're actually in an alpha state, being completely downloaded with new ideas. So when you're constantly watching those movies where whites are the heroes, this slowly causes the viewers to start revering them. This happens without most of us even realizing it. This is why so many black people are now enamored by the oppressors in spite of such a brutally horrific history to the contrary. They also program our minds in ways that benefits their white society through those TV crime reenactment shows. Those shows constantly showing black on black crime being solved most often by white police officers also similarly program our minds to think in ways that benefits the white society. When we repeatedly see those shows of black people being victimized by other black people and being brought closure by white cops that solves the crime, this sends a subliminal message into our subconscious minds that we're our worst enemies and that we should revere and respect our oppressors. Subliminal messages are messages that are hidden and embedded in the media that are designed to bypass our conscious mind but becomes embedded into our subconscious mind. Don't dispute facts you don't understand for a silly slave syndrome myth you've been misled to believe. Doing so will keep you mentally enslaved by your oppressors. If you don't think that our oppressors exploit their monopoly over media images and narratives that are constantly fed into our minds to manipulate us to think in ways that benefits themselves, you are extremely naive. White oppressive forces constantly inundates us with fraudulent propaganda campaigns that are they exaggerate the issue of black on black crime to convey the subliminal message that it's now ourselves that are our worst enemies. It's designed to make us fear each other. The white ruling powers realize that a fearful black population is much more easier to control than a fearless one. Fear is one of the most powerful human emotions, and it can be used as a tool for controlling targeted populations. When people are gripped by fear of a threat, people's rationality shuts down, making them easily manipulable by anyone that promises safety from the threat. Oppressive governments often maintain their grip over targeted groups by continually invoking fear and then proceeding to claim that only they, the ruling powers, have the means and ability to protect the population from this threat. The white oppressors have manipulated millions of black people to fear our own people and to believe that we need the white society to protect us from our own people. Fear within a targeted population are often consequence of narratives created by those in positions of power. Ruling class for many years have understood the power of intentionally invoking fear in their subordinate populations as a means of social control. Social scientists calls it fear psychosis. Manipulating black people to think in ways benefiting the white society is not a new concept. Throughout history, those empires that were brutally oppressive, fearing eventual retribution from the oppressed, have always manipulated the minds of the oppressed to think in ways that prevents them from unifying and seeking retribution against the oppressors. Therefore, the beliefs and perceptions held by the oppressed are never truly their own. They're always falsehoods beneficial to the oppressors that have been shrewdly subliminally embedded into the minds of the oppressed by their oppressors without them even realizing it. This is the truth of our plighting condition. It has nothing to do with a silly slave syndrome myth. Now, why is it important? Why is it important? It's important because we must function based upon what is true. Because if our understanding of our plighting condition remains flawed, then all of our liberating strategies that stems from those misunderstandings will also be flawed. This is why those of us who know the truth must teach. It is not a silly slave syndrome myth. It is the white society's monopoly over information that's fed into our minds. That's how they're controlling us. It is time to wake up to our reality. One love and peace.